Thank you, Molly, for joining me today. I'm excited to chat with you, especially after our work weekend we just had here. Um, so I know you as a biker, a photographer, obviously from our work this weekend, but I want to hear from you, how do you describe what you do, your work, what you enjoy in that realm?
I hesitate to call myself a photographer. I've just started getting comfortable with that as
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing more and more paid photography work.
Mm-hmm.
I have so much respect for photographers and all creatives, videographers, any creative, graphic designers, writers, journalists. And so when I'm hesitating to
Mm-hmm.
call myself a photographer. Um, I've only been shooting photos the last 3 or 4 years, 4 years, and but I'm getting more comfortable with it now as I'm taking on more paid work, and then I'm actually starting to feel like I have a process.
Mm-hmm.
I've finally done enough photography work and photography that I'm like, okay, I'm starting to feel like
Mm-hmm.
like a photographer, but um, I still hesitate because I don't want to begin to hate photography. It
Mm.
still feels very creative for me. Even, we're here doing a commercial work. You're shooting video, I'm shooting photos for a commercial partner. So this is a job, but I still really love the creative component of it.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, I'm just so hesitant to be like, I'm a photographer. And then, in 5 or 10 years, I'll look back and I'll just hate shooting photos and I'll hate doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, really, really trying to hold on to like the fun and the creative part. But generally, for the last handful of years, I've been a pro cyclist, like a professional bike racer for, gosh, I hate even saying going on 20 years. And post the pandemic, I was able to really pivot into community building within sport, like within cycling mostly, because that's been my comfort zone and what I've been doing for tons and tons of years. But yeah, within all sport, as I'm doing a little more in running and multi-sport, bouldering, climbing, I think the pandemic really allowed me to shift and pivot. My sole focus was winning bike races, and I
Mm-hmm.
was mostly a cyclocross racer. And then raced as gravel became what it is now, gravel racing as a discipline. Um, I kind of laugh. People are like, "What do you race?" I'm like, "Whatever pays the bills." For a long time, that was cyclocross. I had done some mountain biking and road racing, but it was cyclocross that I was both good at and also was very popular in the kind of the 2010s, the early 2010s. Anyways, I've been a pro bike racer for a long time. The pandemic, I think, forced most people to pivot a little bit or
Mm-hmm.
adjust like what they were doing for work. Either
Mm-hmm.
they were out of work or they lost their jobs or had to step back. And then as the pandemic started opening up, I had started shooting video for some automotive clients, and then I started shooting still photos just for fun. And then I was like, oh, I really like shooting still photos. So, anyways, now I think I'm getting comfortable saying that I do community building and creative work.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
That's
But
great.
yeah, so I'm doing community building and photography and
Cool.
creative work. And then I'm starting to dip my toes back into videography, but I know that that's a whole nother world that I want to do, I want to get better at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. So over the weekend, I've caught glimpses of your background um, and all the fun things it seems like you've done and places you've been. And so I'd like you to take me a little bit through kind of the progression to obviously where you are now, Tucson, but also the kind of work you do now. You mentioned community building. I think your journey into becoming a pro and then into community building is also really interesting. So can you take me a little bit through that? I mean, we share
Yeah.
obviously San Francisco as a home at some point for
Yeah.
you. So tell me about how this all came to be.
Well,
I know this is gonna
okay.
be long.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not 50 years old yet, but I'm close. So there's, close to 50 years of this story. But I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area in 95, I think late 95, and I was a punk kid. I was in Riot Grrrl and punk rock bands, and I skateboarded, and that was all I did. And when I moved to SF, I broke my foot. This is a very quick.
Sure.
I broke my foot literally the first 2 or 3 months I had moved. It was like right when I moved to SF. I was skating down at the Embarcadero, and again 95, 96, and the Embarcadero was like this really hot spot for skating. It was like I would see it on all the VHS tapes, all the skateboarding videos. I went down there, broke my foot in half, and then I couldn't skate. And that was how I got around the city. I didn't own a car. And then I ended up buying a bike on the street, and it was all spray painted black. And I was like, well, I need to get around somehow. And it's like $50. And in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I bought a stolen bike off of like some sketchy dude on the street. But I was like a young kid and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about bikes. And I rode this like flat bar mountain bike with slick tires all around the city until I think, I broke it or broke a chain or something. And I was working at Kinko's in downtown on Fremont Street, and bike messengers would come into Kinko's all the time and pick up stuff to deliver. And one day I saw a bike message. I didn't really think much about it. I wasn't like wowed by messenger culture initially. And then somebody rode up on a bike with no brakes. I was like looking at this thing. I was like, there's no brakes in this thing. And I'm like staring at it out the windows. And the messenger came in and I was like, how do you ride that bike? And I had been riding the little mountain bike that I bought for a bit. And he explained that it was a fixed gear and that he didn't need brakes. And then it was just, that must have been like 96, probably 97. And from that point on, I was like obsessed. And of course, I got myself a fixed gear and started riding around the city. And then lost the job left the Kinko's job and then started bike messengering. And then I started hanging out at a bike shop. And it just became my whole world. That's all I did. I mean, I was obsessed. I was still playing in hardcore and punk rock bands. And kind of skipping forward a little bit, on tour, I had gone up and down the West Coast, and we had visited Portland and like Vancouver, BC, and like the whole West Coast up and down. And very long story short, we were talking about the Bay Area, like all the SF musicians. A lot of them, we all shared this big warehouse south of downtown, back when it was just warehouse district, and that ended up getting sold during the first .com bubble of the late '90s. It was '99. I mean, it was 1999. We were on tour. We came back from tour, and it was '99 or 2000. The warehouse got sold, so we had to move. And like it was a warehouse, huge warehouse space with dozens of Bay Area SF, San Francisco bands in it. The warehouse got shut down. Everybody moved. I found a practice spot in the East Bay because I lived in an apartment in the city, so we couldn't like play punk rock in an apartment in the Mission. Anyways, I started bouncing between the Bay Area and back. I was like getting more and more into riding bikes. And then I had done like a messenger alley cat race, and then I loved it. And I was like pretty good at it. And I was like, I like riding my bike really, really fast. And so it was just this interesting. In hindsight, it was interesting. At the time, it was a big bummer because I was like, well, now I have to like ride the BART out to West Oakland to and then walk or ride my bike a bunch of blocks to get to this practice space to practice. And it wasn't as convenient as just like being able to bop over to the practice space all the time. So like my music, which was my main creative outlet, the main thing I did outside of working was like ride bikes and play in bands. And we couldn't do that anymore. And like some of my bandmates moved. The bands broke up because it was just impossible you couldn't do it in the city anymore. And that coincided with me getting more and more into cycling and then dabbling in like trying a bike race. And I took the Amtrak all the way the hell down to San Jose to a velodrome, Hellier Velodrome, which is still down there. But at that time, the Amtrak, it stopped. It didn't go all the way into San Jose. It stopped like 10 miles north. Caltrans maybe, and now the line goes much further south. But back then, and I remember hopping off and like riding the bike through the city to get to this velodrome. And then, long story short, I just was really obsessed with bikes. And then I dabbled in bike racing, and then randomly swapped apartments with a girlfriend of mine, a friend that lived in Portland, Oregon, and she knew my housemates in SF, and we just swapped apartments for like a month or two in the summer. And if you've ever been to Portland in the summer, it's incredible. I mean, the Pacific Northwest in the summer, in the early summer when it's consistently nice out, I mean, it's just like it's like had all this pent up angsty winter and Pacific Northwest winter and spring energy. And as soon as it's consistently nice, like everybody's outside and it's just incredible and the energy is incredible. So I fell in love with Portland. I was like, well, this is amazing. And then I was like, well, I could rent a house and have a garden and have punk shows at my house and do all this stuff like in Portland for like, which is just like impossible to do in SF. And at that point it was, it was 2000, the year 2000. And I was in a rent controlled apartment, and so rent was cheap, but I couldn't live the life I wanted to live. And so then I moved to Portland. Biking, Portland wasn't 20 something years ago in 2001. The bike scene in Portland was healthy. There was a lot of bike racing, and it was easy to race your bike 7 days a week in Oregon, like in the summer, in the peak season. You could ride to a bike race and race it. And so it was really easy to ride your bike. And again, it was early Portland days. There was a couple Stumptown coffee locations, and that was the pinnacle of coffee, and now so Portland just became this mecca of food and culture and bikes, certainly bikes and bikes and art. And I had moved there, and I started working on bikes out of my house and really quickly got super busy and then started a bike shop. And that was in 2001. So that's the kind of long story short. I really got into bikes in the Bay Area and San Francisco, and tried some bike racing in San Francisco. And then when I moved to Portland is really when things kind of congealed for me, where I kind of stumbled my way into being a small business owner. It was out of necessity. I couldn't find a job anywhere in Portland. And then I just started working on bikes to make some money. And then all of a sudden I got really, really busy, and there was a need. And then I got a storefront. And then, a year later I had a part-time mechanic working for me. And then, it really was this unintentional thing. I didn't put together a business plan or get a loan. I just started working on bikes, and then, kept doing it and more and getting more business. And then at the same time, I was just riding bikes more than ever. So if you kind of fast forward about a decade of doing that, my bike shop becomes really established. I ended up having 2 locations and a coffee shop inside of one of them.
Heck yeah.
I've been racing, and then again, Portland in the early 2000s became this hotbed of custom bicycle manufacturers. So there's a lot of custom steel frame building. There's a bunch of bike racing. There's so much bicycle, and I not disparagingly, but it's a lot of this white hipster things that artistic and creative white folks are really into was happening in Portland in the early 2000s. And, the cycling boom became a part of it. And then what was kind of cool about that was there's also a lot of creative components within cycling. The custom frame builder thing was very artistic, very fabricators, all these people were these amazing artists that were fabricating bikes, and there's a lot of innovation, and then a lot of just business and culture around that. A frame builder would need a paint shop, and then people started paint shops to paint bikes, but then this stuff is now steamrolled into them painting custom cars and motorcycles. I mean, so that's like a lot of glossing over a lot of the detail, but I really fell in love with cycling. And I really pivoted away from these truly more creative, music. I mean, I played drums and I played guitar. And then when I really got into bikes full time, I had to make a choice. I was well, I know that to train and try to become an elite athlete, I need to be training 10, 20, 30 hours a week. And that's just time. And then I also owned this business, and I was just I just lived at my bike shop. And I was I don't have any time to practice. And I had kind of tried in the early 2000s in Portland. I mean, there's certainly no lack of punk bands and riot girl bands and queer punk bands. And I did a little, but I just was so much more into cycling. So I just totally pivoted into it. And as someone I didn't grow up doing sports at all. I mean, I did a little martial arts as a kid, but I was not into organized sports or ball sports or running. I mean, even cycling, I remember as a kid when I got into skateboarding. And you'd go into the bike shop, skate shop, and I would see the photos on the wall of the mid 90s mountain bikers wearing spandex, and I was I don't want that. I remember seeing that and being turned off and being I'm not interested in that at all. But I wanted to ride bikes off road, and I didn't know how to do that at the time. But the imagery and the images I saw were racers in spandex riding mountain bikes off road, and I was I don't want to do that. I don't want to wear spandex. That turned me off, which is hilarious now because I wear spandex. And so
when you were a young kid, and if you were drawn to the skateboard punk scene, the spandex mountain biking scene was the polar opposite.
So which actually, as
at the time.
no, exactly. And as we're saying it, even now it's almost polar opposites. Though, I know you're a runner and like I'm a cyclist, but I think now I'm just thinking about answering a question. Like, how did I get to this point where I would say like, well, I do community building work, and it's funny talking it out now because I'm almost a product of I really am a product of my upbringing where I was this punk kid and I didn't like spandex, but I wanted to do that stuff. Like I was interested in riding bikes fast. And this is before I had even really ridden bikes. I was a skateboarder, but I was like, I want to do fun stuff that's exciting, but I didn't want to do it in a sporting context. And so now, like having been a professional cyclist for a while, the other thing I didn't mention was like, with the bike shop, I always had a women's component. Like I always wanted to get more women into riding and racing bikes, and like specifically racing bikes. This was 2001, and I was like, there's minimal women's representation. There's a bunch of professional racing that in the early 2000s didn't have women's categories. There weren't women's world cyclocross championships. There weren't women's world mountain biking titles in certain disciplines, and in downhill and enduro, or whatever it was called downhill back in Super D and all these disciplines. Like women weren't. It wasn't even that they weren't represented in the media. They didn't have races. Like they'd have the men's version of the race, and there'd just be no women's race. So I was like, we need more women racing. We need, and I want to always get more women to bikes. So I always had like a women's club or women's team, and then that became a professional team. So like at the peak, and by 2010, like I had this professional women's cycling team that was traveling and racing domestic, like in the U.S. and in Canada, and then I was racing and traveling in the fall and winter because I raced cyclocross, and then in the spring and summer I would like run and manage the women's team, which had staff and cars and vans and assets and then athletes, and then I would train in the summer when the days were longer, and then I would train enough for 3 or 4 months to be able to race a cyclocross season in the fall. So,
damn.
But the creative component, like I was just training 20, 30 hours a week. And even in the bike shop, it was more about community. Like I wasn't, to be honest, like I wasn't a fan. I really hated retail, but I loved like hosting events, and even like hosting other women's teams and clubs and organizations like at the bike shop, and when I had the coffee shop at the studio with the coffee shop. And I loved the community building component. So the pandemic happens, and that stops everything, events, most people's business, everything kind of hits pause, right? In the spring of, it was 21, or was it 20?
20.
Spring of 2020, summer of 2020, everything was just paused, and most people are home, and no one knows what's going to happen in the future. And so my women's team, all the girls and the women on the team stopped racing. There was no racing to do. I called all my sponsors and I was like, hey, look, nothing's going to happen. We don't know how long this is going to be. And I called them to be like, hey, you're paying us, but like nothing's going to happen this year. And luckily, like all of my sponsors were like, hey, it's okay. You're already in our budgets for this year. Everyone's adapting. We'll keep cutting the checks. Just do what you can do. Like if it's like you going out and riding bikes, and I think one of them was like doing some van life or something, great. Like, and so I ended up selling the team cars and the team vans I had, and I bought a used Sprinter van and started building it out so that like I could travel. And then one of my automotive sponsors was like, hey, you mentioned that my marketing could be better. Do you want to shoot some video for us during the pandemic? And I said yes. I was like, yeah, sure. I haven't shot photo or video at this point. Like I had an iPhone, and I think I have a creative eye. Like I kind of know what I want to see, and I was able to capture stuff with my iPhone good enough. But then when they wanted me to actually shoot a COVID protocol video for them, and then manager interviews at like a dozen other stores in Oregon around Portland, and I felt comfortable doing it during the pandemic because it was going to manager interviews were all going to be masked up, and like at a distance, I'd be interviewing someone 10 feet away, and I was like, I feel safe doing this, and then I could help this automotive brand create like a COVID protocol video and how they're letting their customers come in and do touchless pickup, so you could drop your car off for an oil change and then pick it up and not have to touch or interact with anybody. So I like borrowed cameras from friends of mine in Portland. 2 of my best friends are professional wedding photographers. And then, like, they gave me a quick tutorial and showed me how to use these like video cameras, these Fujis, and then sent me off. And like, So I shot like 15 of these manager interviews, and you can see the first ones are rough, and then they like got better. And so I was able to spend 3, 4, 5 months in the pandemic, like learning how to shoot video. And then I really loved it. And then the pandemic kept rolling, things started opening up, events started happening. As soon as I started shooting photo and video, it was like I just tapped back into that creative energy that I had when I was in, punk rock bands, and I was really enjoying shooting photo and video. And then I started shooting more photos, and then I went to some events, and I didn't even ride or race in them. I just like went and rode around a little on my bike, but shot photos of the event, and was just trying to capture like the culture and the scene, and do it in a different. I've always wanted to do it in a different way. There's plenty of race photographers that go out and like, will sit in a race corner and like shoot the same photos of like, 1,000 people coming through, and I was like, I want to go and like find the stories, like what's interesting happening. I know plenty of interesting things that are happening at events. And, having been a pro for a while and having run a professional team for a while, like I know all the promoters, any discipline, mountain biking, road racing, gravel racing, cyclocross. So like I had access, to athletes. All the pro athletes are my colleagues, and then all the race promoters know me, and it was like, great. So, the pandemic and the year after, I really just started shooting photo and video. And then, that summer when Black Lives Matter happened, and like George Floyd was murdered, and there was this lot of social upheaval, and I hesitate saying social unrest, and the outdoor industry, running, climbing, snow sports, cycling, everybody starts freaking out on the brand side. And, on the personal side and the athlete side, yeah, we're all like, hey, we need to pay attention to this stuff. Most of us already are. But all these brands started going like, what can we do? What can we do to advocate for, with Black Lives Matter, with people of color? But then, I think the pandemic and the social upheaval and kind of that era of during the pandemic and just post-pandemic, gosh, was that also during the Trump presidency or the tail end of his first presidency? There's just a lot of attention to like human rights, social rights, reproductive rights. And I had some of my cycling industry and business sponsors, kind of come to me for help. And then there was the first of these anti-transgender and generally anti-LGBTQ laws started getting passed in Arkansas. And the World Cyclocross Championships were in Arkansas that, forgive me, it was 21 or 22. It was January of 21 or 2. And I ended up getting kind of sucked into this, doing a lot of advocacy and activism and coordinating with like the local folks in Fayetteville and Bentonville and Northwest Arkansas, with like kind of going between like pro cycling, the UCI, USA Cycling, the governing bodies, the like, individuals being affected by these laws, the advocacy groups on the ground, national advocacy groups. So I ended up like really diving into this super hard. And long story short, I was able to lean into my cycling partnerships, Shimano North America being the main one, like the biggest cycling brand in the world. And I've been a Shimano athlete for a really long time, and then Shimano sponsored my women's team for long. So that's like, at this point, again, close to a 20-year partnership. And so a lot of these brands in cycling and in the outdoor industries, and certainly 4 or 5 years ago, were just like, we want to do something, but we don't know what to do. And I was in a position that I could like, both having training as an like advocate and an activist, and then also being a trans person, and then being in the LGBTQ community, I was like, well, look, like I've been an athlete of yours for a long time, and people were reaching out to me, and I was like, well, look, I can help advise you on, what to do and what this stuff is. And that is the long rambling pivot into how I was able to, because of my like sporting authenticity, then when these outdoor industry brands had the stomach to start diving into and putting dollars and resources and energy towards social issues, I was able to pivot into doing that more for work.
Okay.
And at the same time had been shooting photos and video, which ended up being and still is really great. So present day, like I'm getting a little older, and I still am technically a professional cyclist, but it's less about winning races and more about going to races and events. And I'll lead group rides, I'll host meetups. We'll call them like affinity meetups, or like at Unbound, which is like the biggest gravel race in the world. I'll lead a pride ride, and I'll help other people and other brands like organize group rides. Sometimes I'll speak on panel discussions. I consult with and advise race promoters and organizations like constantly. There'll be things that come up, certainly around transgender participation, also just around general like LGBTQ, people just don't know. And there's a lot of people that just aren't in the LGBTQ community, and they're like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to respectfully engage with this and be authentic. Like, how can I not screw this up? And yeah, that's what I do these days. So,
Okay.
and then, in the last year, I've been leaning more into doing like paid photography and videography work. And that's been really fun. And again, flexing the creative muscles that I really didn't when I was a pro bike racer, because I was just spending 20, 30 hours a week riding my bike and racing. Yeah,
Damn.
that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, there's so many things I want to dive into on there. I'm trying to think which one first. I think, it's interesting coming from, so you had a big creative stint in your band, obviously. And then you went from that to kind of, your bike shop, which kind of was community building in a way. And I feel like there is something about this creative mindset that does well with community building, because it is kind of like solving problems and like being interested in stories, and maybe seeing, like you said, seeing things that are like, isn't the norm, and like being able to build community around that. So I think that's really interesting. And then you kind of come back to now photography work, where like you come back to that creative. I mean, do you feel like that middle period where you're doing bikes, like, was your creative outlet, kind of the community, the business side of things? Do you feel like that was satisfying it enough to like let you kind of go deep on the pro biking?
Yeah. Like, when I was in my 20s back then, I don't think, now I'm a little older and I can look back with the perspective and hindsight, and, and I can assess these things and be like, oh, that's what I was doing then. But at the time, literally, like, opening the bike shop was just out of necessity. So I think I really was, or at least in the first handful of years, just like taking things as they came. It wasn't like this intentional, like, oh, well, I've stopped playing music and now I need a creative outlet.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But
as you look back on it now, how do you see it?
I do now. I can assess it and go, oh yeah, I've always had this creative drive in me. And you're right. Like, running the business, I wanted to fill a need that didn't exist for me, and that I didn't see. Like, there were plenty. There were only like a handful of bike shops in Portland when I opened mine, and they're all good bike shops. Honestly, I liked all the bike shops in Portland, but I was like, well, there's not a shop that is like really community focused, but isn't like a bunch of hippies, and isn't dipping their toes into spandex and racing, but isn't like a full-on pro shop. And I really was like, how can I kind of have both? Because I knew like legitimately, I knew a bunch of queers and LGBTQ folks, and lesbians and trans folks and people of color that like wanted to race their bikes. They wanted to try it, but they wouldn't they were intimidated and would generally have a bad retail experience going to like the pro shop or the racer shop or the shop that was a little more performance oriented. And it's kind of like, I was like, I want the shop that I would go to, where women will feel comfortable coming in. People of color will feel respected and comfortable coming in. Like, anybody, I would always tell my staff, I was like, we need to talk to everyone. Like, we're trying to win over everyone like they're, older, trying to think of the way to say it. Like, I was like, imagine talking to people, like, you're trying to explain stuff to someone's grandma and they don't know anything about bikes, but you want to be really, really respectful and you want to make them feel really comfortable, but you also don't want to like talk down to them. So there's like a balance of like being respectful, but then because bikes and even like running, you know, people could like start talking about a running shoe and be talking about carbon and this and that. And if it's like, you know, a 60-year-old woman that's like, hey, I'm a little older, I want to get into running, but I'm intimidated by all these other shops that are just a bunch of dudes explaining the latest $300 carbon fiber soled shoe to me. Like, I'm like, listen to them. And like, that's who you need to learn how to communicate with is, and I didn't do a good job explaining that, but I was like, we need to treat everyone with respect. And then if they want to talk about the technology and the gear, well, you can go down that road with them, but we're not trying to like beat them over the head with performance and spec because that's going to intimidate a lot of people. And I also believe that people tell you what they want in retail and in business, in bike shops, like in the first minute of them coming in. If someone came to my shop and they say, you know, I don't know, I was looking for some purple tires. Like that's what they want. And you might not have purple tiles on the shelf, but it always drives me crazy when, you know, you go in somewhere and, you know, I think I did this with like bouldering shoes. I went in, I was like, hey, I'm like brand new to bouldering. I want to do this for fun. And like, they're trying to sell me these like crazy high-end shoes. And I'm like, right, that's the experience people have in bike shops or running shops. And I'm like, no, we're trying to welcome everyone into this. And that's why I was like, if an 80-year-old grandma comes in, we want her to feel really comfortable and just make her feel safe and make her feel seen and acknowledged. I don't know why we're talking about this so much, but I really wanted to create a business, like a bike shop that would make me feel comfortable and not annoyed. Like I didn't want to go in and get talked down to people. Talked down to by mechanics or staff.
Yeah, I think this is interesting, and I think it's important. Like we have the same, I mean, yeah, like you said, running shoes are kind of the same. Like you can totally nerd out on specs all day long, but people who come to shops, majority are just like, I just want something that is comfortable to run in.
Yeah.
And I run at a pace that is not your average pro pace, you know?
Yeah.
And so like the specs don't really matter that much, and they just are looking for something comfortable. And,
Totally.
you know, so I think that's definitely there. And I think that like artist brain of yours probably like, almost like, you know, artists who create art are creating something they want to create, right? They found maybe a part of art that doesn't exist and they want to like make that, and you've almost found that in the community, in the bike shop. And I think it's really cool. And I love that so you intentionally went into creating this thinking about a safer space.
Yeah, that's why I was rambling. We were talking about like the creative component, and then bike shop and retail, and again, in hindsight, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have, 25 years ago, I wouldn't have been like, oh, it's this intentional thing I'm coming in to make, you know, with this creative vision. I was like, no, I'm doing this thing and it's slowly becoming real. And how do I make it what I want? Well, what do I want? I want everyone to feel welcome. In particular, I want, you know, LGBTQ folks and BIPOC folks to feel really comfortable coming in. And then I had been racing and riding my bike fast, and I was like, I also want to kind of facilitate and welcome like queers and punks and like weirdos to feel like they can race a bike.
Right.
And again, whether they wear spandex or not. And that was always my thing. I was like, whatever you want to get into, I don't care. In the early days of my women team, I mean, even the later days, I was like, I don't care what you race.
Yeah.
Race track bikes, road bikes, mountain bikes. You want to race triathlons? Like, great. I'll support you as much as I can. And after a while, I was like, I know all these industry. I was able to like provide gear and helmets. And in the early days, you know, I was like, yeah, I can supply product and kit and clothing and nutrition. And I just want you to, I want to facilitate this because I know it's how hard and expensive it is for everyone. And also the spaces, like, and so with the creativity component, it wasn't like a conscious thing. It wasn't like I stopped playing music and then I was like trying to find creativity in bikes. I think it was a little more natural where like, actually, I've thought this a lot. And over the years, like, when I raced bikes, and certainly once I became better at cyclocross, I absolutely always felt like it was almost more of a creative expression than like an athletic expression. It's something I never ever talked about or thought, but like I remember
Interesting.
racing, and I was like, especially with a sport like cyclocross, which is very technical, like kind of on par with mountain biking, where like it's not like there's just a road and you're riding down the road and like you climb hills and then there's a finish line. It's like, oh, there's rocks and roots and changing terrain and your equipment and how you dial in your equipment really matters, and there's so much nuance in it. And I always really prided myself. I took pride in that. Like, I looked at this whole thing as a canvas of sorts, and I was like, and if it was rainy and wet or snowy, that would be different gear choices and equipment, and even nutrition choices than if it was like really hot in the summertime. And I loved that because that was kind of flexing a creative component or creative muscle or whatever during sport. And I imagine a lot of athletes, and particularly athletes I think maybe are a little more experienced, have been doing it for a while, because that's also a part of the privilege too, right? Like even artists, like I had you have to have the privilege to be able to afford musical equipment or like be able to afford paint and brushes and the materials, our fancy cameras that we use. Like, it might have taken us a lot of time to save up money to like buy the camera, but yeah, when you've been in sport for a while, I think then you can get really creative and interesting, even just like with the athletic expression. I mean, I would literally count pedal strokes in certain sections on some races, and think about the balance and the artistry of like me going through corners, and not in an egotistic or a vain way, but just like in an efficiency, a sporting efficiency way. Like what's gonna be what would be the most efficient way to like crest this hill, touch the brakes as little as possible, drop in through this corner and slide across the mud to then exit in the proper angle. Like that was like artist efficiency, what is the most beautiful way to do that? And like the most beautiful way would usually be the most efficient way, and then therefore, that's give me the most sporting advantage, coming out of the corner the best. Anyways, I absolutely would think about that all the time, but I never ever externalize that. Like this might be one of the first times I've ever talked about that. Like, yeah, I really always felt like that in sport. This is actually a great conversation because this stuff I really haven't vocalized or thought about. I mean, even photography and stuff and the work we've been doing, I'm such a practical person. I just like do the thing. And, like I'm on social media and we all talk about ourselves because, I'm trying to work and do more work and get paid. But like, and certainly with sport, we got to talk about what we're doing and our training and our results and our races coming up and our schedules and our new sponsors, and we got to show off our new gear. But for me, the sporting component was always so creative. Like, it was fun to like figure out the most beautiful way to approach an event.
I find that similar to how I feel about trail running too.
Yeah. Yes.
Versus road running, let's say, for instance.
Exactly. Yes.
And I love, and it's funny, Patty O'Leary and I go back and forth on this because he's obviously a very strong runner. He's a pro, and he crushes me on the uphills no matter what. But on downhills, especially if the downhill's technical, I crush him.
Yeah.
And it's because I fucking love like where am I gonna place my feet? How am I gonna down the trail and just like bopping around and like taking turns and like thinking about exactly how you just described cyclocross. Like, how can I move through this landscape in an efficient but fun and maybe even like aesthetically pleasing to me way?
Exactly.
And
like there's no photographers or media out there when you two are just like doing a run in the Marin Headlands or whatever,
Yeah.
But like, absolutely, I think about like, yes, you're like, oh, and then especially if you're running or riding similar, routes, or it's a race you've done a few times, and you're like, well, last time I did that, I took 7 steps, and man, if I could do it in 3, that'd be faster. Or maybe you do it in 12 because the smaller steps are gonna give you more traction and a little more efficiency and not blow out your quads. And we should do it. We got to do a video project or something on that, like thinking about the artistry that goes into.
I saw this one. It was like a long time ago. Someone did this research study where they had like a brim of a hat, and they put a camera looking at someone's eye and a camera looking forward and did eye tracking to
Oh,
see where the
yeah.
eye would look as they trail. Well, this was just actually more of less trail running, more of like a hiking situation. But it was kind of similarly like, how do you navigate a very rocky and kind of technical area? Where does your eye go and like where do you step? And I found that so interesting, and I was like, that'd be so cool to like have that as like a trail runner who's like really good technical terrain, like blasting through this technical terrain, and then
Yeah.
just like looking at the eye go,
Just
you know,
everywhere.
and like where they're placing their foot. It's good. Yeah, I think about it all the time. It's fun. So this is okay, cool. So I love that.
We
I
could
love that
talk
we got
all
here.
goddamn
Yeah,
day long.
I love that we got here.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that you're going into photography, you know, how are you kind of bringing back? Because I imagine, you know, music is creatively, I feel like, different in a way where like you kind of like probably have ideas in like notes or riffs. I don't really know how it works, but I imagine you have the way ideas come to you. You kind of like get something and then you probably kind of go and maybe like try it a little bit, and then you go back to maybe kind of think. Photography is kind of like a little bit more, be a little more effort to kind of try something, right? You have to, at least for us, we have to go to an event,
Yes.
maybe, and like, or get a friend to come out and run or bike next to us.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, obviously, how you might do that. And then as you're learning too, you're kind of learning the gear. And, you know, when you played music, you probably learned forever to try to like just hit the right chords before you actually could creatively think of like, oh, what if I put these chords together, you know, I imagine. So how do you think of that? You know, how can you describe a little or talk a little bit about?
I love you explaining it like that because again, I hadn't really thought of it. It's exactly the same. Like you're also with music, like I wasn't taught. Like I wasn't a trained musician. I still don't know how to like read music. And I'm actually a horrible guitar player. Like I played guitar in punk rock and like riot girl bands. So it was like a lot of screaming. And like, sure, back then when I was a lot younger, in my teens and 20s, like I could play guitar a lot more. I was a drummer.
Okay.
So I was a self-taught drummer. And then I started playing bass guitar and regular guitar in bands, and I would never say I was good. Like I could play in punk rock and hardcore bands, but if somebody was like, give me an E, A, G, I would be like, I don't know what that is. But I can play it for me. Okay, I could hear it, and then I could play it.
That's cool.
Same exact thing I did with photography and videography. When that automotive sponsor came to me during the pandemic, and they were like, hey, you shoot video, don't you? Would you want to shoot some video, make a commercial for us? I just said yes because I was like, well, I know enough creatives. If I will try to do this, and if I can't figure it out, I'll give the work to an actual professional. But same thing, I was like completely self-taught. I mentioned to you this earlier, you know, like I asked a DP, a director of photography friend of mine, I was like, hey, this guy Greg Schmidt in Portland, he's incredible and really experienced. And I was like, hey, I have an opportunity to shoot some video. What should I buy? Like, what should I get? You know, for like a basic starter video camera that could shoot 4K. And he told me to get like a Panasonic GH5 and you get some lenses. So I was just totally self-taught. Like I bought this gear. Well, I borrowed gear. And then once I had gotten a paycheck or two from this gig that I started doing, then like I was like, all right, I have a couple grand. I'm going to buy a used camera. And I started doing it. And I just poured all that training energy from being a professional cyclist. I stopped riding bikes in the pandemic. That was also a funny thing is during the pandemic, I really hated bikes. It was just work. I had gotten to a point where I loved it for everybody else. I loved running the women's team. I wanted to get people into bikes. I had a couple of bad injuries. I'd been racing for a while. I definitely like when I raced in Europe and I raced some World Cups and I was like, all right, I know how fast I am. Like I'm never going to win a World Cup. I'm never going to win a World Championship. And you know, I can sneak into the top 5 or 10 UCI races here and there. And I was totally happy with it. And I was like, I made peace with it. I was like, you know, I think certainly cyclocross racer, when you race in Europe and you get your teeth kicked in or you rise to the top and start winning, racing against the best in the world really like gives you perspective. At least if you can be humble enough to like, that's real life. You're not like winning in your region all the time or even, you know, beating up on the domestic scene. You go and race in the world level and you're like, okay, I know where I'm at. Some people don't. Some people are delusional and they go and they just keep going and you know, whatever. That put me into perspective. And then racing bikes just became a job. And I was like getting a little older. I was in my late 30s. So everything just is like hard. I'm having to train harder just to like hang, you know, and be slightly competitive. And I just started hating it. But it was everything. It was my whole world. And the pandemic was just a strangely good thing, you know, for me. Like I was able to it forced me to stop racing because every year, and I'm sure running is just like, most sports are probably like this, you know, there's like a period of the year where you get a break, you know, the off season, and then you're looking forward to the next year train, and then you start your base preparation, your strength training, your foundation building to prep for the season. And it's just like that every year to year to year, unless you have like a devastating injury that pulls you out for more than 2 or 3 months at a time. Like, yeah, you just like let injuries heal, or you don't let them heal, and you just keep going. I hated riding bikes. I hated racing bikes. I hated it. I loved racing. I hated all the training. And so the pandemic was great. And it allowed me to just pivot all that time and energy into shooting video and learning. So it was all self-taught. Coming back to answer your question, yeah, it was all self-taught. And it was just like bikes. Like it was all self-taught. I just went out and did the thing. But yeah, with music, I was self-taught. And then with what I'm doing now, photography and videography, like it's all self-taught. So you're saying like, you know, with music, yeah, I had to learn, and then I had to learn how to like make the sounds. And it's kind of the same, you know, like you could take a guitar or drums and you're just practicing and learning and trying new stuff, and a lot of trial and error. You know, it's no different. Like when I was in a band, like the trial and error kind of stops when you go to play shows, because you don't want to fuck up. You don't want to like mess up during the shows that you're playing, right? You practice and try to get the songs right. You do all the weird stuff and all the testing and experimenting like at band practice. And then when you go out, everything should be buttoned up and dialed. And the same thing with video work you're doing and photo work. Like I'll try stuff out, but like on the shoot that we're at here now, like I want to make sure everything's buttoned up and dialed. But what's still interesting is like, you know, we've both been here editing and backing up all the photos and video we shot, and I'm like trying stuff out to see with the edits, like what I like and what I don't like, and then also what the client wants. And there's still so much for me to learn. And that's what's interesting, is like, there's some images I'll see. I do have so much respect for creatives. I'll see other video or photos out there, and I'll see, I love a lot of photographers and I think they're amazing. And I'll see like my friend Dominique Powers. And the look of her photos is just like incredible, like ethereal. And she has a ton of work. You know, there's a whole scope of work, but there's some of these photos that I don't know how to get that look. And it's not like defeating. I'm just like, I need to try and experiment more and try different shots and mess with lighting more and see if I can get some of those looks. But like you said, like we have to go to events, we have to go to races, or we have to con a friend into coming out and like, hey, I want you to like run up and down this hill a dozen times so I can get this shit photo of you running down this hill. Yeah, it's just so creative. It's so creative. And like, I love it. And you and I are fortunate that like we're able to do it and get paid. I mean, we shot a lot this weekend. This was the most intensive shoot I've ever done. And it was great because we're nailing the shot list for the client. But then, I mean, we're in Tucson and we're up in the Encino Canyon. It's just objectively stunning. The weather's been crazy with like rain and storm clouds rolling through and then blazingly sunny. So we really had like a challenging shoot in a lot of ways. But it's been fun too, because it's like the lighting conditions are changing, temperature's changing, the vibe is changing, and it's been fun to like trying stuff out there. Like once I made sure I got all the shots the client wants and I got them in the way they want, then I'm like, okay, I can try some other stuff out here.
Yeah, I think that's, and I want to talk to you about your process now, your creative process, or at least how you think about it so far. But I do find that interesting too. Like when you have a client work, you kind of do want to make sure you're nailing the safe shots. But then there's aspect of it that like, you know, how often are you going to have all these athletes out here running for you?
Yeah, this has been fun.
And so like, can I mess around a little bit after I get some of the safe shots, you know, and like try some different things out? But so, you know, let's talk about creative process. You know, I know you feel newer in your photography career, at least what you were saying. So, you know, as far as you think of it, tell me about how you think of your creative process, you know, how you kind of get ideas, what that looks like, how you maybe try them, how you play, like what does that look like for you?
I think being new to photography, I'm really privileged in that I have all these long relationships that like my automotive sponsors and even like Shimano and my like Goo Energy Labs and my partner brands, like they've known me for such a long time as an athlete, and there's a relationship there. And then when I started shooting photos, there was like, I, and it wasn't like a look I wanted, but it was just like, I want to, like, I just know what I want the images to look like. I want my blacks to be really black. And like, there's such a huge technical component to this too. I mean, it's kind of going back to what you just asked a few minutes ago with like practicing on the guitar. Like the technical stuff is still the biggest hurdle for me, but I'm getting better. Like it has been, I mean, like let's just call it since the pandemic, which is 2020, and we're going into the heart of 25. So it's been almost a full 5 years since I've been like dabbling and started dabbling
Totally.
again. So I'm still new for sure compared to many, but like it's been a handful of years. Like, you know, I can pick up a camera and I can get it, I can compose a decent photo, but still like the technical part is still a lot to learn. So in my process, like, let's just take like this shoot. You know, I have had the fortune of like getting some paid work, but the process before was really just me going with cameras and trying to capture the photos and like the humanity that I wanted to see, mostly at bike races. Again, you know, like I'm still going to races and I will like ride or race the race, but these days, like I carry my little Fuji X100 on my back with a strap, and as I'm really getting good at ride, I haven't crashed yet, but like I ride and I'll take a lot of the photos that I have in my galleries, my portfolio are just like from me racing or riding, and I'll just like pull it out and I'll just be turning around. And it's not as I actually love viewfinders. I've tried using like the little Ricoh. I've tried using smaller compact cameras with no viewfinder. I hate it. I can't fall in love with them. I'm in love with these Fuji X100s, and I'll be riding my bicycle fast as hell and be looking through the viewfinder, just like snapping photos. And so the process was really like, gosh, what do they call it? Like run and gun. Like,
Yeah.
again, I'm really not a photography geek. Like,
That's great.
like, but I follow it and I read more because I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn a lot of the technical info and learn about the different cameras and learn about technical and equipment. Street photography. That's what I would call what I've been doing. But then now as like, you know, I think people have seen what I'm shooting, certainly on my social media, and then more and more like I got a like paid gig here and some paid work here, and I'll do some work for brands and athletes. I mean, most of the pro bike racers that are racing these days, besides the really young guns, the up and coming, you know, men and young women, they might not know me, but like most people are still racing know me from either racing against me or from racing against the women's team I ran or just from being in the community. And so I've been shooting a lot of photos of like my colleagues, you know, or in like a lot of bike racers. And I love helping athletes out. So, you know, if I'm not doing for free, I'm shooting them for very cheap. Because I was there, I was like, yeah, I know what pro bike, you know, every $100, every $500, it means something. Like that's travel expenses, that's race entries. So the process, let's take this shoot, which we both knew. I mean, you know, we had a bunch of meetings leading up to this shoot, a lot of creative meetings. We had Patty was our, you know, creative director, creative assistant. We had staff from Goo here, which I've worked like this before, but this was really good to have like a second video shooter and then me shooting stills and a lot of help. You know, there's always somebody, if I was like, hey, I'm shooting this thing you on the shot list, but what do you think of this? I'd show them the camera. Up leading into this, I knew the kind of look they wanted. You know, we had the list of athletes, we had a shot list. And so I'm finally getting to a point where I'm comfortable, where I'm like, all right, I have, you know, I carry a couple cameras with 2 different lenses. I know that I'm gonna have the gear I need. We really were challenged with the weather changing and everything. I just was like, we had to make some choices on like, I decided not to bring ND filters. I felt like the light, the cameras are gonna be good for all the light we had. I wouldn't need a neutral density filter. But the process was like, more structured with this shoot than normal for me.
Yeah.
Because I will a lot of times, for instance, next week, I'm driving to Monterey, California for Sea Otter Classic, which is a 5-day long bicycle festival expo. It's the big Lifetime Grand Prix, big kickoff of the pro bike racing, the biggest pro racing series in the US right now. And I'm going to go and shoot for brands. I'm going to go and shoot for Shimano. I'm going to go and shoot for athletes. And a lot of it will be, this is an event that's just like happening. It'll be dynamic. And I know how to capture content for brands that'll feel very human and less staged. And same with athletes. Like as an athlete, I know what the athletes are looking for. And those days are a little less structured, so the process is like, I'm really, I'd say this not in a self-aggrandizing way. I'm really meticulous and really particular about, I wipe all my SD cards and the cameras and I back everything up immediately. Whereas a lot of photographers and creatives I know, it's like two of my best friends are both professional wedding photographers and they're a couple, and like I love them to death. But I'll like go into their office and there's like cameras and bodies everywhere and SD cards all over, and they'll be like, "We have them here somewhere." And
oh no.
And like I'm like in my mind, I'm like I can't fathom not shooting something and then immediately backing it up twice, and then wiping that SD card while I'm charging the battery from that camera, so that as soon as I pick that camera up again, it has a perfectly clean SD card. The settings are I always return the settings to a baseline.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like so that when I pick the camera up, I start from there, and I know exactly where I know exactly where I gotta go. And then as I'm learning, I'll like adapt and change a little bit. Like I used to, I'm trying to think of a good example, but generally I'll set all the cameras up to like the widest aperture, and usually like 200 shutter speed or 400, so that. And then I was guilty of using auto ISO for a really long time, as I didn't know better and I didn't feel comfortable with changing ISO for some reason. Now I'm getting more and more comfortable. I think that was just part of the technically like going between like the Fuji X100 and the Canon R5s. Like I would get confused because I was just new to the technical, what all the knobs and buttons did. And now as I'm getting more comfortable, I'm like, okay, I know I can shoot, and so if I pick up the camera at an event and something's happening, if my shutter speed is too low, if it's at like 80 or something, like if I was just shooting portraits and it was really low, like 80 or 60, and then I'm like, I grab it and I'm just snapping something, I turn it on really quick because someone's riding by and I want to get photos, the photos are going to be blurry. So now I'm like, all right, I'll just have everything at a reasonable baseline so that if I need to capture something quick, I can. And also, cameras these days are so insane. I'm like really privileged that I got into like pro level photography in this day and age, because the Canon R5 is like completely overpowered. You can have your settings all messed up and shoot a photo and like 90% of the time it's in focus, and you can fix it up and it'll look, you can put it in a magazine and it's crazy. So when you take your time and have it set up, they're even more insane. So yeah, my workflow is like, I start off with like a surgically clean slate. My SD cards are clean, my camera's clean, everything's just like buttoned up and dialed. I make sure the batteries are charged. And then I really try to back everything up and get everything dumped onto a backup hard drive as quick as possible. Like I pull everything off and back it up, so then I have it. That was one thing when I started getting into photography and video stuff, was realizing like how like, oh, raw photos are huge. Video stuff I'm shooting in 4K and it's like, holy crap, I have dozens and dozens of hard drives. And I know that like a lot of people won't shoot it. They just shoot JPEGs, But I'm like, why? Like I shoot raw and JPEGs because if someone wants that image and they will need it for a banner. Actually, at Seattle next week, a bicycle tire company hired me to shoot photos, and they were like, we need our banner, our big, 20 by 10 by 20 banner, and we want this athlete in it, and we want these shots. And I did that shoot and gave it to them, and of course, I'm shooting raw and JPEG all the time because if someone needs it. I don't know. Hard drives are cheap these days.
Yeah,
you can get fucking space seems cheap.
Space is cheap.
So I back everything up quick, and then the point I'm at now in this shoot is like, we've done our shot list. We've captured everything we need to. I go into Lightroom and I'll open up. I also create separate catalogs for each individual shoot or like section of shoots. Originally, I again, learning the technology and the programs and the hardware. Like I would just shoot a bunch of photos and I used to do it by month. I would be like, oh, I shot all this stuff in March of 2020, whatever. And then I was realizing, well, I need it to be more organized because I've had ADD since I was a kid, and like it's even worse as I'm getting older, and I really need it to be organized into shoot with like very clear descriptions on the files. So a lot of the time that I spent here, I spent a lot of time organizing everything so that when, this company comes back and they're like, hey, we can't find, or we need this image of that athlete with the energy gel or the energy chew blocks, then I can find the folder, and it'll be organized. And so now what I'm doing is I go through, and what I do is I'll rate them with the star system.
Oh, you do? Okay. Okay.
And I'll just run through everything I shot, or everything that I've uploaded, because sometimes I'll shoot, there'll be a few different shoots, but they'll fit into the same catalog. So, say we shoot the energy gels in the morning and then we do some with other athletes in the afternoon. Well, I'll take both of those shoots. They're the same category of products, so they're going to go in the same catalog. I'll go through and I'll just give, I won't rate it if it's blurry or if it's garbage shot. I won't rate it with a star. If it's something that I'll want to use and edit, I'll rate it with a 2. And then as I'm going, if I find like a key shot, like one that I'm like, that's the shot, like the framing's, it's just like unedited, it looks great, I'll actually take the time to just run through, and I have presets that I've made already that kind of like have the look that I generally have, but this client doesn't want that look specifically. They were like, we don't want them as dark. We want them a little brighter. And they sent me some samples and I was like, okay. So I go through and I create the edit for the client, and then I'll give that one a 5-star. And then that one's like my key photo. So then again, I could close that catalog and not touch it, if it's not a rush, for weeks. And I want to be able to come back, and if I need a refresher, I'll go open the catalog and I'll go, okay, find me all the 5-star photos. And I'm like, cool, there's 3. And then I look at them, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is the look and the vibe that we need for the rest of this catalog. And then, I need to make the time. Editing takes so long. Like, as tiring as these shoots were, the whole time I'm just like, oh, editing all these is gonna just take so much longer. And since I'm new, I still make a lot of mistakes. And like, they're not drastic mistakes. I'm still taking good photos, but like, oh, the white balance is a little off, or like the lights, the exposure's a little high or low. So I'm still at a point in photography and videography that I'm still doing more cleanup in post-production than I want to be doing.
Interesting. Okay.
For sure. And
you want it nailed in camera.
I mean, don't you?
I think I've come to the realization that that's too much pressure on myself.
Okay.
And so I like to get close, of course.
Yeah.
I want it to be close.
Yeah.
But also that like editing is part of that.
Okay.
And especially if we're running and gunning. I mean, this weekend has been a little bit more of a, we're working directly with the athletes to, have something a little bit more posed, or at least faked that it was
we had
natural.
a lot of stage stuff this weekend. Stage stuff we were trying to make look not staged and look natural.
In those situations, I'm a little bit more dialed. But in run and gun situations at a race or something.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
You don't have time.
I know.
And like lights changing, whether it be the weather or someone running through trees and then in the sun and back in the trees.
I know.
And like, I actually use auto ISO a lot.
Yeah.
Because I don't have time to always change the ISO. And if I can change it, I mean, I don't use auto ISO that much in video anymore. I used to use auto ISO a lot in video.
Yeah.
But then it breathes a lot.
Yeah.
And I hated that.
I hated that too. And that's why I was like, so, in the last 2 years, I've really been I've weaned myself out of auto ISO because that's a great word, breathe. It was just bouncing all over.
Yeah.
And it was driving me crazy. And so I would reach out again to like photographer friends and, directors, videographers. And I was like, y'all, I'm editing these photos. It was one shoot, same camera, same exact settings. And I know it's the auto ISO, but literally like the light's not changing and I'm shooting these photos and then I go in to edit them and it's all over the place across like 30 images. And they were like, yeah, it's probably the auto ISO, and depending on the camera and the technology, it's whatever algorithm or the hardware is just searching and trying to find the right setting. And you might not notice it while you're shooting, but the processor is like bouncing all over the place trying to figure it out. So like, yeah, get comfortable with lighting and like using non-auto ISO and setting it up. And this shoot, I felt, again, this shoot was challenging because the light was truly all over the place.
Yeah.
Going from really harsh to like completely cloud covered and harsh to like dappled lighting in the shade. And then, and yeah, I was using that ISO knob a ton.
Yeah.
And I actually started leaning on that more because I wanted to keep the shutter speed the same. When the athletes were running, I wanted the shutter speed pretty high to capture them. And so I was like, all right, I'm getting comfortable just like slamming that ISO knob all over the place as the light is changing. I mean, even the shots like going kind of into the light and then into the shadow as they're running down the trail. Yeah, I would be like, all right, I'm shooting, and then like notching the ISO over it, to just, I don't love staring at screens. And that's a part of it too, is I really, really am enjoying photography, but the more paid work I'm doing, and like I shoot plenty of photos on my own for fun, and I'm just creating screen time for myself. And that's something I'm really cognizant of, is again, being a pro bike racer for so long and running my women's team, it was all about marketing and social media and websites and videos and constantly cranking out content. And it was so exhausting to me. I don't want to be staring at screens all the time, but I love shooting photos. But then the more photos I shoot, if my photos aren't dialed, that's why I'm trying to be so meticulous and surgical with the prep, because if I can, I want to get to a point where like I can just shoot. And then when I go to edit, and I'm actually getting pretty close, I'm getting pretty good now, where I go to edit and I'm really not doing much. Like I'm maybe adjusting the, exposure a little bit, but like it's good. Where I actually struggled here was we shot some stuff in the house. Oh God, it's all over the place. It's horrible. Yeah. And I'm struggling with the white balance there. But anyways.
Yeah, no, in the house is always way harder, and white balance is weird because at least in this house we have really good natural light, which is what we have right now.
Yeah. But then at night,
with these yellow lights, when the internal housing light turns on, and so it's yellow, and then when you have yellow mixed with the blue outdoor light, it's like so hard to, because you're like, every angle is a little different. So like you go one way and you're like, okay, well this side of the picture now isn't right. And you go,
It's literally the last thing before we sat down to do this. I was like, I'm going to spend so long shooting the first day. And it was just dinner. And I was like, it's not that exciting of a scene, but there's some cool human elements there that I'd like to get, but it's not really on the shot list. And I was like editing that Lightroom catalog, and just the first dinner at the first day. And I was like, what I'm learning too is, especially with paid work, like is stop creating work for myself. And that's part of why I'm like, I want to get as much in body as dialed as possible, so that I'm not creating more work for myself later, because I want to spend time with my partner and like enjoy my life and not stare at a screen for 10 hours a day. And then also, if the client, like I love a lot of those images, but if the client doesn't want them, and the way that people, not just like consumers, but like I call them end users, like whether it's the client as end user or the client's consumers, or, people are just looking at stuff on their phones, like I sent over, we did a final wrap shoot, a group photo from this media camp, athlete training camp. And we went out and you shot video, and I shot the photos of the group photo, and I was over there obsessing over it. And then I did an edit and I sent it to the text thread to everybody, and everybody's like shouts across the room, okay, it looks fine. And you really helped, because I was obsessing over, there were some people of color and their skin tones. Yeah. And all the white folks looked okay, but a little orange, but then it's making sure that the people of color skin tones like looked correct. And then you were like, you know what, like, it's outdoors, it's a group photo, like this isn't like a studio photo. People are gonna accept that like there's some overexposed, underexposed stuff. Also, this is gonna mostly be viewed on a screen that's like that. And I was like, thank you. Yeah. I'm looking on it on my MacBook Pro, and I got it like this. And I'm like, I literally had isolated.
Zoomed in.
I had isolated each individual, and I made sure that like Heba's skin tones were perfect, and Sika's skin tones were perfect, and Steph's skin tones were dialed, and
which is appreciated. I'm sure like those.
I hope they appreciate it.
People who are not white have to have dealt with poor skin toning probably for a while in photography. Yeah. And so it is very good that you put attention to that, of course, and I do as well.
Yeah.
When it's studio work especially, or if it's a solo out in nature, if we're focusing on the athlete for sure. I also, with group shots and stuff like that, or like the more fun moments, I've relaxed myself a little bit in those, because it's like
Yeah.
that's a little bit more authentic. And
Yeah.
like, just even if it's weird yellow lighting, it's like everyone understands indoors at night, it's just you have yellow lights in houses.
Yeah,
And if it's a little yellow,
totally.
it's okay. You don't want it super yellow, but like if it's a little yellow, it's okay. And sometimes I feel like if you push it too far, especially in video, because you don't have raw.
Yeah, I know.
Especially in
video
video.
color is so rough. It's so intense.
If you didn't set the white balance before you did indoor lighting stuff, and it's like super yellow, pushing it to non-yellow just looks weird.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like at some point you're just like just doing what you got, and yeah.
But well, just to interject.
Yeah.
Part of my process, truthfully, is the community building work I do a lot of work with BIPOC folks. Like, if anything, I should start just like, when people are like, what do you do? I'm gonna be like, I want to champion people that don't look like me. Like,
Heck yeah.
I want to champion like BIPOC folks, queer folks, visibly LGBTQ people, because in cycling and in most sport, it's still very like white and cisgendered and like very heteronormative kind of spaces.
Definitely.
And none of that is disparaging against, straight white folks. It's just, there's been half a dozen years now of all this like DEI talk, and now the current administration is, everything's anti-DEI, right? So my job, I'm here to champion like everybody else. And part of that in my workflow is, oh, absolutely. I do a lot of work where like, I'm not a person of color, but my long years of like building relationships with other advocates and other community organizing groups, so I'll just take like, there's so many orgs. Ride for Racial Justice. Mm-hmm. I build a rapport with the folks that run that, and it's like all black folk. I mean, it's all people of color. It's majority black folks. And it's an organization that goes to a lot of bike races, and they build cohorts. And so they'll get a lot of people of color, BIPOC folks that don't traditionally come to like bike races. Listen, this speaks to my heart, because this is like what I was doing in the early 2000s with just like women and LGBTQ folks, like queer folks. I was like, I want to get more queers into bikes. And so Ride for Racial Justice, they just want to get more people of color into racing bikes. And I'm like, hell yeah, so I end up just shooting a ton of photos. And, initially I was just shooting a ton of photos of them and giving them to them to use. And, and now we have like a good rapport, and they invite me out to rides, so like I get to come out to dinners and stuff where it's like, oh, it's just for BIPOC folks, but you can take photos of us. And I'm like, okay, yeah, hell yeah. Ethically, my workflow, like literally, like I really, truly, like it's my obligation if I'm doing photos, whether it's paid or not, to like make sure people of color, that it's an accurate representation of their skin tone, of their fucking melanin, because it's so important, and it's so varied and different. And like, yeah, for sure. Like, absolutely. Like, a group photo and candid shots, like, we're not going to overthink some of this stuff. But right. I'm like, no, hell yeah. Like, if these Ride for Racial Justice brings a cohort of like, again, new, totally inexperienced, people that might not even consider themselves athletes to a bike race, might be their first event. When I take a photo, and if I share a folder of them with this, group or with the event, I want to make sure that they look beautiful, and it's a really, really accurate. And like skin tones, man, I'm obsessed because I feel like it's this like ethical and moral obligation to really like step up and make sure that people are accurately represented visually, and that like then they can come and like use my photos and be like, hell yeah, we always look good in these photos. And that's part of my workflow. I mean, literally, it's something, as soon as I open the photos, if there's a person of color in there, I'm like, first thing I do is that how I see them? Is that what their skin looks like? Is it too orange? Is it too yellow? Is it off? Is it a little too light? And it actually is fucking challenging. I mean, especially, I'm glad I'm not shooting a lot of video, because I have so much more video. I want to shoot more, but it's the post-production and getting it right. But yeah, with photos, it's like, yeah, technically it can be really hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes the lighting is just really wacky, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the lighting, it does so much too, and there's only so much you can fix that in post.
Yeah.
And it's like, if it wasn't the right lighting for that skin type,
true.
There's only so much you can do.
There's that.
I think something I've tried to get better at is definitely sending it to those people who I'm not sure about and
Yes,
being like,
absolutely.
please, I'm totally fine with you telling me, is this the correct skin tone for you?
Yeah.
Please,
I love
feel free
that.
to. And it's definitely, I've gotten it wrong before. I'm like, okay, great, thank you. I will make those changes. How is
Hell
this
yeah.
now?
I love that.
And I feel like it's just like understanding that I have that gap of knowledge, and so I have to rely on them to
Yeah.
co-create the image for them, right?
I appreciate that. There's plenty of photographers I would imagine that just aren't going to take that input, and that's awesome.
If that was one of the, I mean, that was one of the big things I think that came out of the pandemic for me and learning about all
Absolutely.
this stuff. And especially I love learning about all this stuff, and I love learning about it for the things that I'm passionate about in those areas, which are, creation of photography and video, the running community and community in
Yeah.
general. And so, especially with trail running too, we struggle with access and we struggle with getting the trails to have more diverse people on it. And there's only, there's also lots of historical reasons why that's true. And there's obviously lots of monetary and social reasons. But it's hard to say that too, because biking is a much bigger
Oh, yeah.
monetary commitment.
Yeah.
And yet biking, I think, is more diverse than trail running.
Yeah.
And so
Interesting.
it's really comes down to access, I think, one, but two, growing up with it.
I was just going to say visibility and representation.
Yeah,
I said the
and
same
that
thing
too, of
about
course,
cycling.
yes.
Like, it's in terms of representation and people of color in bike racing, but also just cycling in general. It's such an amazing time right now because there are so many kind of grassroots orgs. Black Girls Do Bike.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna stumble over so many of them, but like regionally and on a local level, there are a lot of orgs now getting more and more people of color into bikes, and I believe like it shouldn't be me. That's kind of the position I put myself in. Like
Yeah.
I'm a white person. I want to again champion all these other people,
Mm-hmm.
these people that don't look like me, and lift them up and elevate them, And so I love it now because when I opened my bike shop, there wasn't shit. I mean, there really weren't orgs trying to get more people of color into bikes or in any, again, general outdoor industry. I mean, we're both like,
Yeah.
I'm more of a cyclist, you're more of a runner, but like, yeah, we're in the outdoor industry. You and I could get called up to do a ski shoot or something, or go do a kayaking shoot or bouldering or rock climbing. And every outdoor industry suffers the same problems. It's mostly been wealthy white people with means. Whether you're a rich white person, you can afford a $100 pair of shoes. And I grew up as a reasonably poor white kid in the South in Texas, but I still had more than a lot of other folks that didn't. And a lot of them are people of color. But I love that. I love that now there's more representation, and that's a part of my workflow and my ethical thing is, when I'm at events, I'll just try to shoot more people of color if they're there, and like put my lens on people that fit outside of the norm. And then what's also been kind of cool is like now being welcomed into these like like straight up black spaces and being like, this is great because I'm not singling anybody out because everybody in the room's fucking black and it's great. Like, and it's just different. I was at an event last fall in September and it's the only, as far as I know, black owned and run and owned by a black woman, like mountain biking festival. And it was a women's it wasn't a BIPOC only event, but it was like, it's my friend Rachel Olzer, and she's in Northwest Arkansas, and she runs Grit Fest and a nonprofit called All Bikes Welcome. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you're the only black woman that runs any kind of cycling event, but a cycling, mountain bike camp. And like, it's unique for people to be in black-led spaces, for white people, also for black people, to be certainly in the outdoor industry, to be like, cool, this is a black-owned and operated bouldering event. Don't think it exists. Same thing in running. Like, do we have a lot of like black-owned and operated, running events, whether it's a small grassroots run or it's a bigger national level event? No, it's still like overwhelmingly white. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I'm digressing a little bit, but you said it. Growing up with it, it's the representation and seeing themselves. So that's why even more important for me as like a white photographer to accurately represent people of color and absolutely get their input on their skin tones and their hair and like how do you want to look. I want you to look dope. I want you to feel like the photo I take of you is beautiful and representative of you and your community, specifically you if you're the subject. Tell me what I can do better or how you want it to look. And then that imagery is going to stick around forever, you know, and then hopefully younger folks see that and they can be like, oh, there's a black woman running a mountain biking event in Arkansas of all places. That's amazing. Maybe I can get into mountain biking. So yeah, growing up with it. And it's a tough spot because I so badly over the years have wanted to start, because I think if you grow up around running, you're going to get into running. You grow up around bikes. The thing I've seen with a lot of like initiatives is somebody will, I've had talks with this with friends of mine that are black and have been in bike racing and bikes forever. And they're like, yeah, a brand will come along and they'll dump a bunch of product in the hood. And then like, all these kids ride bikes, but their parents aren't into bikes. Their cousins and uncles and nephews and brothers and sisters and their extended family aren't into bikes at all. And they're just like, what are you doing? You're like, why are you wearing these tight clothes and riding bikes? And then they just will age out of it. Like if there's not immediate community and you're not surrounded by it and you don't see that representation in your really, truly local community, you're not going to stick with it or get into it. And again, this is why when I started the bike shop and it started becoming a real thing, I was like, I want to get more queers into bikes and I want to get more queers into bike racing. And I'm not saying I single-handedly did that by any means, but like, sure, I absolutely was such a big driver of it in Portland, Oregon in the early 2000s. And now it's like a super queer place to ride bikes, you know, and like and race bikes. And there's all sorts of queer and gender nonconforming and trans folks. And like, you know, Portland being a very white city, there's tons of people of color in the outdoor industry, running and riding and bouldering. I just love it. Like, again, I'm not taking any credit, but now being in Tucson, Arizona, and then being in Portland and like dipping my toes into bouldering and like some running. And I see like now there's, you know, BIPOC nights, you know, and it's like, great. I'm not welcome there. I'm not coming to that, but like there's a BIPOC bouldering night at the climbing gyms, you know, here in Tucson and in Portland. And that's like awesome. And sometimes the gyms won't be closed exclusively for that. So you'll go and you'll be like, why the hell are all these Latino people here? And they'll be like, oh, because it's like a BIPOC night and there's all these people of color here bouldering. And that's so awesome. And again, that's representation and having it around and growing up around it. And we're in a as dismal as times may seem right now in the beginning of 2025. Like we've lived through some horrible administrations and we will survive this one. And we're going to need to fight and continue to represent ourselves and marginalized communities. But I do think it is an exciting time because, with social media and, you know, and then I mean, again, even us too, like not that long ago, you or I would have gotten into photography or videography and not had these conversations and not been challenged like that. We would just be taking photos and people of color would look like garbage in them and they wouldn't really have much of a voice to critique us and we would be oblivious to it. And man, I think we live in a very amazing time now too with communication and access. You know, someone can comment or send us a message on one of our social media platforms and be like, hey, your photo doesn't look good, or like give us feedback. And I think that's really, really great if you're open to criticism and feedback.
I mean, we have to be. I think all humans kind of have to be. And the healthier we have a relationship with ourselves and everything, the easier it is to take. And okay, there's so many things I wanted to dive in.
We could talk all day. We're going to talk for an hour, and your camera's going to overheat.
Honestly, it's okay. The first time I did this, it overheated. 30 minutes. Okay, so I've been. Quick aside, I have been testing how long this camera would last. Without overheating in my house in San Francisco, where it's 55 degrees, and it did great. It lasted 2 hours, and I just shut it off, and I was like, great. I'm probably not going to go more than 2 hours. I brought it to my friend's house on a hot San Francisco day. And it was like 70, 80 degrees. We were sweating profusely in the house.
San Francisco day, 70 degrees.
I know. Okay, we're in Tucson, I get it. Anyways, it overheated in like 40 minutes. And so we don't have a full, but I have the fan going now and it's a little cooler in here.
I almost told you to turn that off, but.
I turned it on because I was like, I need a little airflow. So I think it's fine. And you know, honestly, these will keep going, the mics will, and that's more important to me than this.
For sure.
This is maybe good for a quick social cut down. But there were so many things you just mentioned, and I was a community leader for November Project, which is this outdoor, not outdoor, sorry. Well, it is outdoor. Anyways, November Project is a free fitness community. Always free workouts, early mornings. usually in local parks, and like it was in 55 major cities around the world. So it was this big thing. It was all volunteer led. It was about, making workouts fun and having a good time and not being too elite. And it was all like kind of body weight, stuff, doing a little park, running around. So it was really fun. And so I was one of the leaders of this in San Francisco. And so my co-leader and I did a lot of thinking on like, how do we bring in more people of color and more people who are just not, white cis gender people or males or binary. And so we thought about that a lot. And now that I've moved on from that, I think about it in trail running because that's kind of like my new space. And I think about it a lot in photography, obviously, because that's my career, and videography and making stories, telling stories. And so we could go down this route of talking about this now for a while. I don't know if that's the right move here, or if I still want to.
We will talk about creative process and
cameras.
And
I kind of want to go back. I want to go
creative.
back to some of more talking about you as an individual and your creative journey, which obviously this is a part of.
Yeah, really is.
And we could talk more about your thought. I would love to get your thoughts even off camera on just like
good.
I was gonna say how the trail running community can do better. Now having done this with the bike community.
Yeah.
But I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about. You had mentioned when we first started, you were nervous to call yourself a photographer because you didn't want it to ruin this for you in 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I see in your I don't want to say career, but you had this big stint of band, punk, rock.
Yeah.
Then you went into a big stint of bike community, and now you're kind of starting this photography, video, creative outlet. Did this happen? Like, did band get ruined for you by feeling that was a thing? And then did cycling kind of get ruined for you, or at least racing? And then now you're kind of worried about photography getting ruined. Like, is this like a thing? Do you feel like you become too into it, or maybe you do it for too much money and it becomes less fun? Like, what is going on?
I think that I don't think music and bands got ruined because in a way I was a lot younger and I got out of it never got ruined. It was pretty pure. I mean, I was like in my teens and in my early 20s. And then when I dipped into cycling and kind of really it was a conscious transition. I was like, I only have so much time in the week. If I want to get good at X, bikes, like I need to really be focusing on that. And I chose to kind of step away from music full time. Yeah, music never really got ruined for me. I still really, really love it. But cycling did. I mean, I went all in. I owned a business. I owned a bike shop. I ran a women's team. I mean, it is still my whole world. Mm-hmm. It's tough to get out of it. And I think that what ruins anything is money. If you're stressed about money, it's going to make things hard and challenging. And like, look, I mean, I am stressed about money. There's times where I'm like, how am I going to pay my mortgage? And, but I think it's because I'm older now and I do have, like, I can look at myself. I can look at my 20-year-old self. And when you're 30, you can't really look at your 20-year-old self. I mean, you might think you can, but not like, I'll be 50 in a few years. And, it's just maturing and knowing myself really well. And again, like when I was into bikes and I was a professional and I was really trying to win races and be the best athlete I could, I was so optimized. And I'm sure like all the athletes we worked with here can relate to that. But all the athletes we worked in here, most of them are like, are really still in it. And I see that in a lot of young pros too. And I was the same. Like I was so optimized and so focused on everything was optimized. Nutrition, sleep, personal life, private life. Like everything was about being a machine. And I'm really good at that. I mean, again, take my process. Like when I shoot photos, I reset the camera to the same settings. So when I pick it up, it's the same and the cards are wiped. If I pick up a camera, I mean, that's kind of what I was doing. I didn't download everything last night when I got back late. And so this morning I woke up and I was like, what the hell is this? What's on my cards? And then I had to go through and check the backup hard drives and be like, okay, where am I at? All right, great, cool. I'm right, it's the stuff from last night. And then first thing I do is back everything up. Anyways, it's just so optimized. So I'm carrying over, and I actually think for photography and stuff, those will be they're great traits to like be so organized and be really organized, meticulous, and not haphazard and creative and willy-nilly. But you know, I have the perspective, and I think truly like it comes with age where I'm like, if I go too far down that road, it's not going to be, I'll find myself falling out of love with it. So like, I'm interested in, you know, I don't know if I want this to be my full-time career. I say that like hesitantly because I'm like, I do enjoy this. I actually do really enjoy the work. I hate the screen time. I hate how much time I'm behind the screen. I love shooting. I really, really do. And I love, you know, like even the camera gear and the equipment. And I was telling Yuri, they're just tools to do a job. Like I love my Fuji X100. Like I love it. I do have a connection to it, but if I broke it or someone stole it, I would just be like, fine, I'll just get another one. Well, you know, if I can afford another one, I'll get one. That's why we have insurance. But you know, even my cameras and stuff, I'm not married to them. Like if you took my Canons away and they were like, you have to shoot with Sony now, I'd be like, okay, it'd mostly be annoying because it would take me a little while to learn, do a learning curve to get the look I want. And I was the same with bikes. I was like, they're tools to do a job. I've got tons and tons of bikes, but I'm like, as long as they got a fast set of wheels, I'm good. And also there's like brand loyalty, and like I do appreciate certain things. Some things work and some things don't. But if I go I'm just mentioning that because again, like I think I'll be happy. I mean, I hate using my cell phone to take photos of anything. It kills me. I'm just like, I wish I had my Fuji. I wish I had something else.
I know.
But it's not a snobbery thing, you know? Like, I think there are plenty of people that take better photos than I do on all our professional cameras with their cell phones, you know? I think that, like, I love the kind of creative component of it. And maybe more than bikes, be hard to, in bike racing, to get paid to be creative in bike racing, right? You kind of do, bike racing exists as sport. You do get paid to win races. And in photography, luckily for me, like the creative component is more of a part of it. And I in a non-self-aggrandizing way, I get good feedback on my photos, and people love what I capture. And luckily, like that doesn't feel like work to me. So this is like a pretty sweet spot. However, like if I really start going down this road, and I'm trying to find more photo work. I'm kind of putting it out there more like, hey, it's not just like me being a pro bike racer and doing my thing. I'm like, if you ever have commercial work, like let me know. I want more work. I'm just keeping it in check. I don't want to hate it like I hated bikes, because there became a point, and granted this is after like close to 20 years of racing my bike, that I just like hated it. I was like, I love racing, I hate everything else around it. I didn't actually, for the last 10 years, I really didn't like riding my bike. I loved racing it, but like I didn't look forward to like 5-hour rides by myself. And you're doing 5 or 6 hour rides almost every day when you're training full time. And like, oh, I hated it. And you know, Portland, Oregon, there's some professional talent in Oregon for cycling, but like it's, you know, the weather's seasonal, you know, it's really shitty for potentially 6 to 10 months of the year, and summers in the Pacific Northwest are amazing, but I got tired of doing like 5 and 6 hour rides in the rain by myself to just put in the work to then, like, again, as I got older, be just trying to be competitive. And I just really started to hate it. And then, you know, sure, my relationships suffer, you know, I don't have a social life.
Yeah.
Maybe a victim of my own success. It's like, oh, cry me a river. I got good at bikes. It became my job, and then I hated it. But I'm trying to keep all that in check with shooting photos and video. Like, it's really fun. I like working hard. I don't want to push it to a point where like I'm hating grabbing a camera. Yeah. Like touching the camera is still really fun for me. Like every time we went out, I was excited. There's a challenge, there's a creative component. Also, this is fun with like, we had a dozen athletes that we could make do things. That's great. Like this is super, super fun. Yeah. And you know, even when we go to events, that's still fun. It's interesting and fun. And so I'm trying to keep that in check, you know, I think when you trade your passions for money, it doesn't matter what it is, you know, then it can become work. And it's like, look, like we could both probably make a lot more money doing something else.
Totally.
I'm not driven by money, but like, right when, like, if if this creative photography and video work became my full-time gig, well, then you are like stressing,
Yeah.
you mentioned, you're like when some jobs fall through and you're like, ooh, how am I going to pay the mortgage? How
Yeah.
am I going to pay my bills if like, oh, some gigs I had lined up, well, they didn't. The economy's horrible and people aren't, first thing that's going to go is marketing and R&D and, like that's where creatives are kind of in a funny spot. So I'm enjoying it right now because it's not exclusively my full-time hustle.
Cool.
An ideal thing would be to continue to develop my relationship with, my main contracts, my main partners are kind of like sustaining partnerships. And I think I'm in a good position. But in sport, in the outdoor industry, it is kind of a constant hustle of like chasing the contracts. So
Totally.
That's like next week we'll go to Sea Otter and I'll have these conversations and be like, look, I need to make this a sustaining thing where like I can get paid to both like continue to do community building activations, be present in the scene and in the community, consult with you and advise you when things come up or you need an authentic connection to these communities that you might not be a part of, and then also continue to get paid gigs and like have more creative work. And but I'm in a cool spot now and I'm really grateful for it. But it's been, my partner pointed out, she's like, these relationships aren't like overnight. It's not like you woke up one day and it's like, cool. It's like, no, these are like 20 decades old relationships of people that like know you, trust you. And now you're able to do this other work. And like, and that's great. That's
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that, you're always trading something and keeping it. I mean, the nice thing about this photography stuff and especially video, like there's always something to learn, always something to try.
Exactly.
There's always like really awesome people who think of creative ideas and inspire us to try something new or to, tell a story in a different way or whatever it is. And so like that's always been fuel for me to like, last year in particular, I did a lot of client work, and I don't think I could do too many years of how much work I did last year without just rage quitting, burning out, rage quitting.
Exactly.
And so like I'm personally trying to similarly think about, how do I balance this a little bit more? And I agree with you. I totally don't want to be on my screen all the time either.
Right.
In fact, I'm trying to be off social media a lot. And I'm just trying to enjoy time with my partner, time with my dog, time with like my community as much as I can. And I think there's definitely, like trying to take the photos close to good as you can so you don't have to do as much editing, right? Or, video, it's hard. Video, it's like there is a lot of editing time there. And I think something for me I'm thinking about is like, can I find a video editing partner who's like a young gun who's like excited about the world and like ready to dive in and edit some cool videos. And so then I can like do these weekends, because I love this kind of stuff. Being out here for the weekend, I love it. I love meeting people. I love hanging with people. I love being in nature. I love hanging in nature. And so like if I could just do that and then hand off all my creative work and just kind of like help direct, that would be awesome. So like that's something I'm thinking about too. And the same thing exists for photographers. I think I watched a master class on Jimmy Chin, and he just hands all of his stuff
on YouTube or something.
It was, it's on Masterclass, the actual, it might also be on YouTube for sure.
No, you're right. Yeah.
But it was actually his Masterclass.
Yes.
And he just hands all his edits to like, I think a DIT they call him, which is like a digital technician or something. And that person imports everything, does a first round of culling, like with the 2 stars, and then also does a first pass of applying presets and making sure they look pretty good. And then Jimmy Chin comes on and he's like, oh, good job. Yeah, I like these. Cool, let's do these and send those 5 to me. And, he then finishes it. And I'm like, that's the life.
Maybe we could get there.
Maybe that's, and I think I would love that, I think, for client stuff. But I think there's an aspect of like, it's also fun to.
Yeah, it's super, it's still, like you said, there's always something to learn.
Yeah.
Constantly.
And so I think one other thing I found really interesting about what you were talking about is when we talked about creative process, we talked about kind of the nitty gritty of the process. But what I loved was your beginning. You said you kind of started with having a camera on your back on your bike, and you were biking. You were in the field with the others
racing.
Biking.
Literally, I was racing.
Yeah, you were racing, or you were biking next to people. You were in it. That's how kind of I got started too. I would just carry a camera with me on my trail runs.
Fuck yeah.
And I would just get inspired as I was moving. And I found this creative inspiration through movement. And because like you're on a bike ride or you're on a run all the time and you're like, wow, it looks so pretty. And so at that moment, that's when like the camera would come out and I'd be like, oh, I'm running with my community, so I'd let the runners pass me or whatever and take that photo. So yeah, I wanted to ask you, do you find inspiration in movement along with the camera? Like, do you feel like that was something for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think like, I mean, when cell phones first came out, the cameras weren't great, but then by the early mid 2000s, I'm constantly taking photos on, when I'm out riding and on my cell phone. And that just like enabled you to like be in movement, whether you're running or riding or whatever, and then be able to like capture images. Absolutely. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I just wanted to capture like the things I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, as you were just talking about that, it just made me realize like next week at Sea Otter, it was last year or 2 years ago. It's out in Fort Ord, which is it's not a national park, but it's like a state or national park wildlife area. And there's bobcats and beautiful flowers. And, it's in the Central California coast. And I'm looking forward next week to riding out this one spot. A couple years ago, I stopped and took photos with my cell phone. Didn't do it justice, but it's on the single track technical mountain bikey part of the course. And I was like racing the mountain bike race one year, and I just stopped and I took some cell phone photos because there's this little area. Then there was just like wildflowers and butterflies, and it was this like, and so it was this. Like I was literally in the middle of a mountain bike race. Granted, I like wasn't racing for the podiums. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have stopped. But I was like, I'm like minutes behind the group in front of me, and I don't even know. There's nobody's behind me, minutes behind me. So like, I'm just gonna stop and take some photos of this. Stopped, absorbed the moment for a second. But I'm like, again, cell phone didn't do it justice. So now I'm like looking forward to going back and like finding that spot again and taking my Fuji to the little X100 and riding with it, and then finding the spot and checking it out and like taking some better photos because I want to like capture and express like what I see. I still like, we've been talking so much about so much to learn. I mean, like yesterday we were out and y'all were running and we were hiking, we were shooting the athletes, and when I followed you up Sabino Canyon, like up on that ridge, I just was like stopping, and I'm a horrible landscape photographer, and so I keep practicing, and I will see things, and that's a little where I need to work. And what's exciting about photography and videography is capturing what I'm seeing and then expressing that in a still or a moving image.
And capturing like the vibe or the moment or the emotion.
And that's what I mean. It's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And like, again, that's the creative part, right? It's like painting a picture. You're expressing something and the feeling and the emotion. So next week I don't expect this natural area part of the course, this little gully, to be exactly the same, but I want to go back and like capture what I was seeing, because the images I got on my cell phone didn't capture what I was seeing. No amount of editing would have made it capture that. And so I want to go back and see if I can really capture that vibe and kind of the juxtaposition a little bit of like capturing, I don't know if I'll necessarily get athletes racing down this part of the course, but I could if it feels right, like the angle's right. But just capture like here, this like bike race happening in this incredibly beautiful wild area, natural area. That's like it, man. I mean, that's like
it. That's the dream.
If I can monetize that and get paid to do that,
Yeah,
it'll be ideal. And I do a little bit right now. Like luckily I'm still able to tap into the creative part. Like the photography this weekend wasn't like so stale of a shoot that it's sucking the life out of us. Like, no, we're getting to play in the elements, and that might be it. I might listen after that hike. I'm like literally, I was on the phone with my girlfriend, with my partner this morning, and I was like, hey, we need to start trail running, because I hate hiking. I hate hiking so much, but I would absolutely trail run more. And I was like, some of those runs in Sabino, they're like 3 mile loops or like a 6 or 7 mile loop. I could totally do that. Like it'll take a bit. The first few will be brutal.
Yeah.
And she hikes a lot and runs. She's like, I'm totally down. Like she's so down. Anytime I have a wacky idea, she's like, yeah, I'm down. Let's do it. So, and then the cool thing about running for me too is like the different pace, because on the bike, there is data, like your eye, the way that your brain can process visual stimuli is different at different speeds.
Sure. Yeah.
So like running, you're going to see, it's a totally different perspective. And I don't know what running speeds are, 5 to 10 miles an hour
Yeah. Depending
versus
on, yeah.
bike, which is like 15 to 30 miles an hour versus car, which is 20 to 60 miles an hour. And I think it'd be really interesting to capture. I mean, when I hike or walk around or jog or something, I see different things than you do when you're on your bike. And that's, I mean, again, just like so much to learn. It's a whole nother world of perspective.
Totally. I love that you just said that, and I hope you enjoy.
I'm not
trail running.
lying. I talked to her on the phone today, and I was telling her about the shoot and everything, and I was like, hey, like, because we hiked up on a part of Sabino I hadn't been to. I'd seen, but I hadn't hiked or walked up there because I hate hiking.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh yeah, that was fun. And I jogged it a little, and I was like, yeah, we need to go back, and I can, bring the camera, and we can just like hike around and bring snacks.
Yeah.
And
That's the great thing about trail running is like when it gets hard, you can just hike.
you just stop.
Yeah, or you can just stop.
You can just walk.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, so the one thing I'm kind of thinking about, I want to get everyone's opinion on as a creative too, as we transition to this world that is, I mean, not transition, we are solidly in a world that is very social media heavy.
Yeah.
How do you feel social media plays a role in creativity, in your creativity? Do you find it beneficial, detrimental? Like, where does that sit for you?
It's tough. I've been on social media for a long time. Like I was an early adopter of blogging, early adopter of all. I mean, in the early 2000s when social media started happening and technology started catching up, like a cell phone could take a video to post to whatever it was back then, Twitter and Instagram eventually. I really hate social media, but I have to do it for work. Just as an athlete, still as a pro athlete and also as a creative now. And truly with like oftentimes debilitating ADHD. Truly, I mean, like it's really frustrating. I've tried all sorts of different meds, some help. I mean, when I sit down to do creative work, especially creative writing, or my brain just locks up and it's so hard. But then stuff like this where we're like, boom, 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 shooting, it's good. So in a way, social media, the rapid fireness can work for me in ways, but I'm also so aware that it's really, really bad for me because it can kind of paralyze me in ways. And when there's just something else you were talking about exploring like different photography and blah, blah, blah. Like, I've been doing social media kind of since it's been around, like truly. And I'm over it. I've never actually did TikTok. I was like, no, I can't. Like,
I drew the line there too.
I did. And Snapchat, I was like, no. There's a point where there's just so much, there's so many apps coming out, and TikTok was early, like had just come out, and and there was like Telegram and Periscope and all these things were coming out, and you're like, as an athlete and then running my team, I had to be on all of them. And then I was managing a team account and my athlete account. And so I've pared everything back, and I'm totally off of Twitter now. And, like I don't love any of them. And certainly when the new administration got voted in and then all the tech oligarchs were getting all this press in the beginning of 2025. And like, I mean, I lost thousands of followers, I hate, but thousands of people just got off the apps. Which is like great, good for them. I'm like, get off the apps.
Yeah.
I still do think that like for information sharing and advocacy, I think, whatever for disinformation, it's out there. But like as a creative, it's like a necessary evil. As an athlete, it's a necessary evil. As a brand, it's a necessary evil. So like I kind of it's all work. Like all that is work. Whether you're an athlete, a pro, running a team, running an organization, a nonprofit, a business, it's all work. And this is now just a part of it. And it's kind of funny. I look at it as work too. I'm like, look, we could, again, you and I could go like take a job doing something else. I mean, who knows what it would be, but probably an office job of sorts, whether we're at home or checking into an office. So this is like actually like in a way I try to remind myself this is a privilege that I have a lot of freedom and like I get to do this. Like I'm pretty active in that I post a lot and I, on social media and I've been doing it long enough that like I engaging with people and I'm decent at storytelling and decent at engaging other people's stories and following other athletes, and there is an element of community there. So totally. it's less about like funny TikTok challenges and goofy dances. I've always hated that. Side note, like when I was running a women's team, every year we would do a team camp, media camp, kind of like this. We'd get all the athletes together in the February or March, somewhere sunny and warm. We'd ride bikes and train a bunch. We'd also go through the team's media policies and you know, the athlete handbook and all that kind of stuff, talk about the new sponsors and get all the athletes up to speed. And from the start, it was a women's team. I was like, look, I want to make, you know, all the social media we do and photography we do and everyone we work with, I want to make you beautiful and we're never going to sexualize you. Also, like, you're athletes and I want you to be seen as sportswomen. And, you know, I would see other teams and programs and just, you know, everybody's like, there's sexualization of young women and girls and athletes. I mean, most of it was just from this athlete perspective where I'm like, look, sex sells. I hate saying that, but like sex stuff is going to get more views than stuff that's not sex stuff, right? And I was like, that's not what this team and program's about. This is about celebrating you as hard women, sports women. Like you're hard women. You ride your bikes in the snow, in the ice, in the rain, in the heat, you know? And that's what we're celebrating. I don't care what you do personally. You know, if you want to sex it up on your social media, that's great. But like as the team, our mandate is to make you look beautiful and powerful. And we will always represent you as athletes first. And so it's always been a pet. I just loathe, like, you see other teams and athletic programs, and it's not like they're forcing their athletes to do it, but, you know, they're doing goofy dances and TikToks and, you know, this kind of this stuff.
Playing the algorithm.
Playing the algorithm. And, like, that is necessary evil, so I'm not shaming anyone, but I never wanted to buy into that, and I never really did, but it's kind of put me in a funny spot because I could certainly have tons more followers and more eyeballs on my... Luckily, none of my partners have ever, I've always done a good enough job with social media and storytelling that I never really got driven to be like, you need to post goofy dancing videos and stuff like that. But I really am trying to challenge myself creatively. I'm like, well, how can I like engage with this and do it more creatively? Like I thought about, and also like, how can I take social media and bring it back into the real world? Like, and so that's like, I'll try to do things with social media. Social media is good for like telling people about things, but I'm like, I want to tell them about things that are happening like on the ground at an event and then do the interesting thing there. So I don't know. I don't have any like brilliant ideas, and that's kind of that's why it's a challenge is like, okay, what can we do to kind of hack the algorithm a little? I mean, the algorithm. I mean, it's wild. I'm sure you've experienced this. You work on an amazing story, a great video edit. You put it together. You're so proud. You've put dozens and if not hundreds of hours into it, you know, and you post this thing and then it gets 12 likes. And then you post some fucking garbage photo of like, I don't know, you know, you dropped your keys on the ground and you post a video and it gets like 1,000 likes and views. And you're like, how?
What?
So chasing the algorithm is frustrating and exhausting. And I've just been trying to stay true to myself and like, my social media is all very representative of me, you know? And so like if I'm on a shoot, you're going to see a lot of that. If I'm at a bike race, you'll see a lot of that. But doing more actual photography work and video work, I'm like, okay, like I do want to tap into this creative outlet. Like I've been wanting to like do tintypes, but tintypes aren't vegan. So right?
No film is.
So yeah, I know. And I'm like, and tintypes have been done. Like people do it. So I'm like, I want to use my hands more, you know, and like, I want to set up a creative studio space at my house where we can use like wood and metal and like recycled materials. And I'm trying to bridge that gap. Like, how do I do these things that can, you know, you could see on social media, but then maybe I bring a lot of this stuff to events. And how do we get like other people to come and get involved and lay their hands on something physical? I also think tintypes are just so technical that like, I couldn't have other people coming. Like I could take tintypes of them, but then like they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm just really trying to wrap my brain on like, what can we do to like get people to engage in person? And using social media as a part of that to like then get people to engage and do fun stuff on the ground. I mean, the simple thing I do is like host meetups and group rides, you know, and then people will, you know, see that. And I take a lot of portraits of people at events. Like I'll be like, come on this group ride. Molly Cameron's going to take your portrait, you know, and then I can share the portraits with them later. And that's always that's cool and fun and that's like fun. Easy. Yeah. But yeah, social media.
Yeah.
This day and age, it's there's a whole world of photography and video work kind of outside of the commercial work. Like there is like art, right?
Yes.
And even when I was a young musician in punk, I mean, I was in punk and Riot Girl, and like we weren't trying to get record contracts. Like if it was one of our punk friends that had a friend of ours and had a record label and put out one of our records, and that was like the coolest thing ever, but like we didn't want to like then use that as a stepping stone to like get signed to a major label, even though like that's the dream, because then you're getting paid to do your work. So that's the whole world of photography that like I know exists, and I'm doing that debate in my head. Will exploring that, is it just like bike racing where like I loved riding my bike fast, well then I could get paid to ride my bike fast, and if I was winning races for brands, like that's like signing to a label. So I'm like, well, I could explore that with photography, and I haven't. Like, it's the art world seems vapid and terrifying, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to go down that route.
Yeah.
But maybe if I just keep doing my thing, and then maybe I can attract benefactors or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Like. I get good feedback and people see the value and people want to pay me for my photos. So I'm like, okay, like there's some level of like I could start shooting photos for art's sake.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't even know how to like sell them, or if I would want to sell them. I know there's a way to make it work. I haven't cracked that yet.
Can I ask you, do you consider what you do already not art?
No, I actually kind of consider it more art. Like I was saying earlier, we were talking about like I always considered like how I raced my bike artistic. I just never vocalized. Like I would it would be too again self-aggrandizing or egotistical to be like, I think riding my bike is art. But I always felt like that. I just was like, this is truly an art. Like again, it's not like a self-important thing. Like I don't hold art up as this like I'm better than anybody or like I'm different. I think a lot of people that are in sport are just like athletes. And I didn't grow up as an athlete, I grew up as like weird poor kid from the South that was just like trying shit and trying to see what fit and trying on, different things, and found skateboarding. And that was more, again, it's a sport now. It wasn't a sport in the early 90s, late 80s, the early 90s. It was just a thing like bad kids did, and we would just skate around town and terrorize everybody because we didn't have anything better to do. And now it's like a legit sport in the Olympics. Like, I was never good enough. I was never that good at skateboarding, but it was a thing I did with passion. Well, like I'm okay at taking photos. I was okay at racing bikes. I think even the commercial work we're doing now, I'm feeling like there's an artistry in it.
Yeah.
I think I just create more work for myself. Like
Yeah.
I do. I think if I was a little more clinical in my photos, and I could just be like, bop, bop, yeah, like Jimmy Chin, it's like, bop, 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 shoot a ton of photos and then like hand it off to somebody and they could edit them and it's done. And I get a big check.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's definitely benefits in that. And, if Jimmy Chims comes back from expedition with 15,000 photos, it's like, that's a lot. I don't really want to go through all that. But
I think when you get to a point that he's famous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And an exception for sure.
Yeah.
Even in photography, right? In the outdoor industry, like adventure industry, whatever, that National Geographic adjacent World Explorer kind of level, that's a whole nother level that most aren't going to get to.
Yeah.
But that's when you just have fuck you money. Of course you could pay a kid to probably paying that person a decent paycheck to do that. Our issue is the industry we work in. We probably don't have big enough checks.
Yeah.
No offense, we're making okay money. Like this is cool. Like we're appreciative for we're making good money at the shoot, but we're not making enough money that we can pay somebody else $30K a year, like a low level person to like just rip through and cull all of our stuff and chop your video edits down and get it so that we can come in and do the finishing touches. One of these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. I know we're doing
There's
this
a lot.
in the middle of the
No, we can wrap.
Let's wrap, because I feel like there's been so much, and I think I would love to even have another second conversation with you later on, because I think we could have talked. This whole podcast could have been about diversity in sport. This whole podcast could have been.
We should do something on that too.
Yeah. So, yes, I think it would be great to talk to you again, especially as you get further into your work. You said you wanted to kind of explore video more again and get back into that.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, there's definitely more we're going to be able to talk about later, and this has been great. Before we sign off, is there anything you'd like to say based on the conversations we had today?
I mean, besides, it's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure working with you. Pleasure getting to know you a little. I think this is it's a cool conversation because I haven't had many conversations like this, and I've had such close relationships with creatives. Like I say creatives, I mean photographers and videographers. Again, like owning a bike shop, but then running a team, and then me being an athlete for so long, I've always had so much respect and worked pretty closely with like photographers and videographers and all these folks. So like, again, like when I talk about hesitating calling myself a photographer, it's just with like such great respect. And that I'm like, yeah, I'm like self-taught. Like I have so much more to learn. Like I'm getting more comfortable because I'm like, okay, I'm actually getting paid to shoot and work and photography. But I look at people that are like masters. And when I say masters, I'm talking about people I know, like people I've worked with that I just see the work they do. And it's incredible. I have so much respect for them. And that I'm feeling more comfortable saying I'm a photographer, and I'm like looking forward to just like continuing to pursue it and like learn, try again, just kind of be a punk kid. And as I'm getting older, continue to be a punk kid, just like trying shit.
Yeah.
And I love the climate, the culture that we have now where we can do this kind of stuff and elevate other people. It's not just like we're out shooting photos and it's this vapid, selfish pursuit. It's like actually we're truly building community. We're helping with representation, helping people that don't look like us grow up seeing themselves in sport, and in the outdoors and on the trails. That's that's like motivating enough, I mean, literally, truly, like for all the fluff of like people talking DEI and this and that, I do think that like the visual representation is such a big piece. Again, not self-importantly self-aggrandizing. I do just think like it's exciting that I can do that. I can like build these relationships with like BIPOC orgs and people and athletes, and it's just like helping so much, and it's exciting. That really is exciting. Like that fuels me, and that's why like the shoot has been rad, and I'm excited to learn more about. I know about running. I'm excited to actually. I was kind of like, oh, this is infectious. I want to get out and trail run some more.
Very cool.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great.
No.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on your show.
On my show. Go ahead.
Thanks.
That's it. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please reach out to me and tell me what you think. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.